The old saying is, what you don't know may kill you, but it may also simply just change your life. We're going to talk about being a step ahead today on We Believe in Memphis. Stay tuned. At Christ Church, we believe in Memphis.
We care so much about the city.
We want to be an agent for change and an agent for good news in this community.
And we're investing ourselves in the needs of the city, trying to make a difference in this city.
I think Memphis's best days are ahead of it. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Amen.
And Memphis is a place where you go together.
A child's zip code should not determine the kind of educational possibilities that child.
Well, the great thing is we have a chance to change those perceptions.
Though Memphis is a very troubled city.
We believe in Memphis.
Yeah, we believe in Memphis.
Welcome to We Believe in Memphis. I'm Shane Stanford.
And I'm Maxie Dunham.
And we're so glad that you've joined us today. We Believe in Memphis is a ministry of Christ Church Memphis, and we love to tell the good stories of amazing people doing incredible things. And today is no different. We have a wonderful program that I think is going to be not just informative, but I think it's also going to maybe introduce you to some new ways of considering some important issues. And all the way up until you are a grandfather and a grandmother, I think we've learned some importance about influence.
Well, and you're looking at me when you emphasize grandparents.
Well, I mean, you maybe even have gone up a level. You might even be a great-grandfather at some point. I'm just saying.
I understand.
I mean, you're trucking along. Not alone. You're trucking along. Miss Jerry, God love her. We just think so much of her. So, and y'all are awesome on that journey. How many years now?
62 years of marriage.
Maxie, I mean, seriously, that is awesome.
It is awesome, but that's not what the program's about.
I know. I'm overwhelmed.
But we could do a marriage program sometime.
I would love to have our wives come on the program and talk. But no, you're right. The program is not about that. But it is about an issue that some people may think is controversial. I'm sure we'll get asked more than once, why did we do this program? Let me just say clearly that Christ Church is pro-life. We are abstinence first and only in terms of what we believe is the best route. But we also live in a world where we know families are impacted and we know that people's lives are at stake here. And we want to make sure that everybody sits at the table and has all the information. That's the only way you affect people's lives anyway, is to get them to the table.
Yeah, and as we talk about this, Shane, it's obvious that people are going to focus too narrowly, and really in our culture, and especially in segments of our culture, there's not enough emphasis on family planning.
Yeah, I believe that we have to be in those conversations. It reduced, just since this has been going on in the last 10 years, this program in Shelby County, the number of teenage pregnancies has been reduced almost by half, and the number of abortions has gone down by 30%. That's pretty successful.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, we're going to be back in just a second to talk with the folks from A Step Ahead. You don't want to miss it. This is We Believe in Memphis. Stay tuned. Hey Memphis, I'm Shane Stanford, one of the pastors at Christ Church here in Memphis. We want to invite you to come and to be a part of all that God is doing in this fellowship, from a thriving children's ministry to an exciting student ministry, all the way through adult classes for discipleship, 12-step programs, a great nursery program, exciting teaching, and also worship and fellowship that brings you closer together. A lot is happening, and we want you to be a part of it. So join us for one of our services over the weekends at 4488 Poplar and be a part of what it means to love Jesus and love like Jesus together. Go to our website at christchurchmemphis.org for more information. Welcome back to We Believe in Memphis. I'm Shane Stanford.
And I'm Maxie Dunham.
And we're so glad you've joined us again. This is a program that loves to tell the good news about incredible people doing amazing things in our Memphis community. And today is no different. But before we get to this great program, we do want to encourage you to go to our website at webelieveinmemphis.org. You'll be able to see more about who we are as an organization. You'll be able to see and watch old archived programs, now almost 270 episodes going back 5 years. We've just interviewed, Maxie, just about all of the movers and shakers, and now we've gotten to the really important people.
That's right.
270 episodes in, because we keep finding one incredible story after another, and we're so excited about that. We do want to encourage you, though, to also see the information that says a new start in life. Maybe you just need someone to pray with you or to walk with you about whatever struggle or difficulty you're going through. Please go and fill that information out in the contact form, because we do want to work with you and walk with you in whatever struggle you may be going through. Today is a program that is close to my heart because I have, as a person who lives with HIV and has for over 3 decades now, I've been in a lot of conversations, a lot of gymnasiums with middle school classes where I've been brought to talk about what it means to have a sexually transmitted disease, what it means to be careful, what it means to talk about abstinence, what it means to talk about prevention. All of those conversations, I've been there. And I know that for so many people, we can sit in the quiet of our living rooms or our studies and we can have our opinions, but until you've actually walked with someone who has gone through a situation such as an unwanted diagnosis, I don't think there's any diagnosis that's actually wanted, an unwanted pregnancy, a life situation that they were not counting on, it does remind you of the importance of what the information is we share, what we share, and why we share it. And so today we're so excited to have with us Claudia Haughton. I have to get that right. I'll practice that over and over in my head, Claudia. But thank you for being with us on We Believe in Memphis.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Shane, Maxie, for having me.
Now, you've been for many years, you were working with the Juvenile Justice Court, is that right?
Well, I'll tell you the brief story.
Please do, yes.
I came to Memphis from law school to clerk for a Court of Appeals judge, and then I was hired by the county attorney's office, and my main client was the health department, and the Board of Education and the juvenile court.
Yes.
And from there, I was hired by the judge, the juvenile court judge, to be one of the judicial magistrates. So I sat on the bench at juvenile court for 17 years.
Wow.
And saw case after case of families in trouble. I mean, you don't usually go to juvenile court if it's a good day.
Yes.
And while I was there, I saw so many problems that seemed to have the same entry, and the same entry involved when they had children before they were able to care for them at different stages of life. And one of my favorite coworkers was Nikki Gibbs, who also was with the Department of Children's Services, and she investigated the severe abuse and the severe cases and was bringing them in front of me. And so again and again, we would see families in dire trouble.
Yes.
And so many times as Nikki and I would discuss it, we always felt like we were downstream pulling bodies out, and we really wanted to go upstream where the bodies were falling in.
Yeah.
And so what did that look like?
Yeah. That's a great image.
It is.
And, well, it was true.
It is true. It is. And so that led you to found A Step Ahead?
Well, I first started looking around at the community and investigating the community, and what I found is so many, many young women did not have access to contraception.
Okay.
Or if they did, what they had access to was the pill only, and it has a high failure rate. And if you're a high-risk teenager, the failure rate is 30%. That means 7 only 70%, it only works on 70% of the women.
And the statistic that a lot of people hear is 97, 98%, but there's a lot of factors that go into making that 97, 98% workable, as I have both heard and talked about. And I think it's important, Claudia, for us to say that, you know, at Christ Church, we are very supportive of abstinence and very supportive of in a pro-life stance. And so, but we've had folks on this program who come from all backgrounds and all conversations. We don't necessarily endorse any particular direction or not. What we do endorse is taking care of our children and making a way for safer families. And so I know there's going to be individuals watching this program who are going to be both for abstinence, who are going to be for passing out condoms on the street corners, and everybody in between. We want the conversation to happen because it's important for the conversation to happen so that people can be about making and being a part of the solution. Is that fair to say?
That is so exactly on point, and having the conversation, and we really believe that that's so significant. And one of the things we have here is a how to talk to your parent or guardian about birth control.
Sure.
So how do you raise the subject with your parent? We also have a youth council, and we have a parent toolkit for the youth council.
And
so for parents to be able to be part of this conversation, and for young families that are married to also be part of birth spacing and knowing what the CDC recommends for birth spacing. And but also making it available for young families to plan, and this is our next little show and tell, the I plan, that they will plan their lives and what they want.
So how do you get involved in the conversation in the first place?
Thank you for asking that. So the conversation happens in lots of places. It happens in church youth groups. It happens in adult groups. It happens with, actually, thanks to the H.W. Durham Foundation, it happens with senior citizens. And we say that they have provided us with a grant to be able to explain to seniors that they are the influencers. That grandmother will have more influence over her granddaughter, frankly, than the mother will on this topic.
Yeah, we found, as we were talking about HIV and AIDS, that when the grandmother, and usually the teenagers were not expecting at all for a grandmother to bring it up, and when they did, it was like glue.
Yes.
Because they listened so much more intently with their grandparents. They were a huge source.
So are you all telling me, I know you're talking about grandmothers, but
no,
I'm a grandfather, an old grandfather, so they would listen to me.
They would listen.
Yes,
and the statistics have proven this out. So
that you are the influencers.
Yes.
And your influence, particularly if you speak from knowledge of what's available. And when you say abstinence is the best, but at some point in your life, when you know you're ready, you need to be aware of these long-acting reversible methods that work 99% of the time.
And I think that is part of the conversation, Claudia, that I wish that as church leaders who, instead of getting together and immediately starting into an argument, that you can bring what you believe is your place in this conversation to the table. But communities that have decided, and we found this out in the HIV and AIDS battle, which it literally was a battle, and I'm afraid it's headed that direction again, is trying to bring the conversations to the table to say, we're talking about people's lives here. We're talking about their futures, and fighting over theological concepts are important conversations, but they're not solving what is a lot of the issue. In just a couple of minutes we have left with you, Claudia, or maybe even a minute, what would you say to that person who comes and says, nope, I don't even want to have this conversation with my little one? What would you say to them?
I would say success looks like this. And we have a chart showing that in 2011, there were 2,400 pregnancies in Shelby County of girls who were teenagers. 2,400. that number has been cut by 48%.
Wow.
And in 2018, it dropped to 1,100.
Wow.
And when you can cut teen pregnancies, then you have higher education rates.
Yes.
You have higher success rates. You have more stable relationships later when they're older and wiser.
Yeah.
And what we say is having the conversation, encouraging young women to have a plan and have an education. And our executive director, Nikki Gibbs, has more to tell you about our emphasis on education.
But let me hear you say. Let me answer this. So you're not against if in that plan they decide abstinence is part of their plan.
Oh, we absolutely encourage it. And at all of our Girl Talk events, one of our staff rules is you have to say the word abstinence 10 times.
I love it.
We always go as a pair, and the one not doing the presentation or talking counts as she said it 10 times.
There you go.
And so that, yes, we do emphasize that. But often you're talking about a young mother who is married, and she and her husband have just had 2 back-to-back babies.
Yes.
And they're tired and they're worn out, and suddenly they go, if I have another one, I could really break up.
Well, and we've had others on the program that talk about, let's say that no matter what is going to happen next, let's say they decide that very much they're not going to abort that child, but they need to still have a plan as to what that means for them going forward in the future. And so having a plan is not negating any other thing that you say you believe. What it does is it puts on the table the real conversation about, okay, what you believe and what you're prepared to do. Are those
exactly
coming together?
And I mentioned the drop in teen pregnancy, but let me emphasize this: we have had a decline of 31% of abortions.
Wonderful.
And when contraception is available and accessible, you don't need an abortion. If you don't get pregnant, you don't even have to talk about an abortion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Claudia, thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great, Claudia.
Thank you, and I'll look forward to hearing from our executive director as well.
We're so glad to have Nikki Gibbs with us, who's the executive director of A Step Ahead. And, you know, Claudia was telling us about what is the importance, the impetus behind what you're doing. Tell us about how you do what you do. What does it look like for A Step Ahead to be in the community, working and doing the things that matter to you?
Well, before we get into that, thank you guys so much for having us on the show.
Absolutely.
And this work is so important. So we can't do the same thing in every community. So I'll start at the beginning. How our programs work is we're education focused.
Okay.
We can't just come out and say, here's birth control.
Sure.
Let's explain before some of the other ones. The abstinence is first. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to our girl talks, that is where the girls are 13 to 17. We want to reach them early. That's a 6-week curriculum. The first session is planning. That's where Claudia mentioned the I plan.
Yeah.
Everything we do at the core of it is about planning. So that's, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish in life? How do you get there? That's when a realistic conversation comes up with, what are some of the barriers?
Sure.
That can get in the way of you accomplishing that goal. And then the family planning part comes after that.
Okay.
This is in a training session you're talking about, in an educational setting?
Mm-hmm. And these are with young ladies at the Boys and Girls Club, community centers, anywhere where they have a group of young ladies will come in and do these 6-week sessions.
Okay, great.
And they're fun. They're not stuffy.
Sure. That's
And they meet the girls where they are.
Sure.
But the most important thing is we want to get out how important hygiene is.
Yeah.
We can't talk about birth control if we don't talk about hygiene.
Yeah.
The next session might be the reproductive system. How does your body work?
Yeah.
And of course, that's not our area. That's where we rely on UT. We'll bring in a white coat,
Sure.
usually a young resident, and that works twofold. That builds trust between the young girls and the doctors.
Yep.
And that gives them something to maybe put on their I plan.
Yeah, they may
is to
want
go
to
to
be.
med school.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And the next one might be, how do you say no? You wouldn't expect to hear that in a conversation about birth control, right?
Yes.
But it's important for young women to know that they're worth waiting for.
Yeah.
And that when you make adult decisions, there are adult consequences. So let's step back. talk about why you're important, why it's important to wait. But if the conversation moves past that, we unapologetically want to give them the correct information so they can make healthy choices.
Well, to actually have authority over their own body, so that they're not feeling like someone else is going to make them or put them in a situation where they have to make decisions they're not ready to make. And you're saying 13 years old?
13 to 17.
Oh, my goodness. I just can't
Have you had good access to these centers where these young women are?
They open the doors like the pearly gates.
That sounds like a Baptist talking.
Well,
I love it.
they welcome us with open arms.
That's great.
And honestly, they see the need for this. And the good thing is we're on the prevention side.
Yeah.
We're smack dead in the middle.
Right.
If we can help young women to think about their actions before they make the decisions, like Claudia mentioned earlier, we're not going downstream pulling up. So
Yes, that's a great image.
you have to start. And I'll tell you what we've just implemented. It's been 8 years since we've been around, and you can imagine the next question. If we're talking to girls, what do you think the community says next?
What about boys?
What about the boys?
Oh, yes.
So before we'd have to say, of course, we're talking to them about the birth control and what part they play in healthy relationships. Now we've just implemented a guy talk. We've hired a young man, and he'll be talking to the guys about what's important to them. Planning.
Yes.
What does your future look like? Their bodies, and how to make healthy decisions when it comes to pregnancy prevention.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited about that.
And it is amazing. To me, I remember when one of the doctors who was working on the plan that we were going into schools and talking about, the number of boys who have no one who talks to them about any of this, and really the culture. We think the culture shapes the way the girls view themselves.
Yes, it
Boys, 90% of them will say they've never had a conversation other than what they've learned from their buddy.
And I'll give you another one.
And from the news. And from the barber, yes.
And that's one of the areas that you probably don't think about unless you do this work. I go into the barber shops as well, and my son is getting his hair cut. And I talk to the barbers about what responsibility they have in providing accurate information to the young men when they're cutting their hair. What do you do before you go on a date? I know you're like 21 now, but when you went on your first date, what's the first thing you want to do? Make sure your hair looks nice.
Exactly.
Make sure you're presentable.
That's right.
And the barber is almost like the priest.
Yes.
They entrust them with their secrets. So we want to equip not just the schools, not just the community centers. This is a situation that we involve all of the community, because at some point you'll come in contact with someone who could benefit from this information.
Absolutely. Well, we have just a couple of minutes left. Nikki, if someone wants to get in touch with your organization, wants to volunteer,
We always welcome volunteers.
And I always assume that nonprofits need money to help.
Absolutely.
So that's part of the situation. But also other volunteers, what do they do? How do they get in touch with you?
They can go to our website, www.astepaheadfoundation.org. They'll find a donate button there, and they'll also find a slip where they can fill out the volunteer form.
Okay.
We always welcome volunteers.
Wonderful.
And I also left out, when we're talking about planning and how important education is, we have a scholarship.
Okay.
We've given away $1 million to date. That's where you're supposed to give me a drum roll.
All right, drum roll. All right. I'm not very good at that, but I'll
You've
try.
given away $1 million.
$1 million. And that's to young women 18 to 35.
Wonderful.
That's for post-secondary accredited schools. So when we talk about young women and them having plans, it could be going to welding school, hair school, 2-year, 4-year, whatever their goals are. If it's an accredited school, we want to be a part of their journey. The only thing that we ask is that they write an essay or a YouTube video talking about the importance of planning and spacing your babies and how these long-acting reversible methods help.
Wonderful.
So my favorite is the YouTube video, the videos, because you really get to see the personality and the passion behind that young woman and her goals.
It is wonderful.
So I really enjoy those. And if someone wanted to access our services, we have a call center.
Sure.
901-320-STEP.
Okay.
We have an operator who'll answer. I hate to say live because they're all live, right?
Yeah.
So we have an operator who'll answer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to make an appointment. And we partner with 24 clinics in the city. So anywhere a young lady lives, she can go to somewhere close to her home that's convenient.
Wonderful.
We pay for a Lyft ride to and from the doctor's visit.
Good.
STI test, pregnancy test, the well woman exam, everything that she needs to make sure that she's able to plan and space her babies in the next stage of her life.
I have 3 daughters.
Fantastic.
And I will tell you, friends, their health starting very early, helping them to understand their bodies. They've been blessed with a wonderful mom.
And dad.
Well, thank you. But my wife's testimony has a lot to do with things that happened to her when she was very young. And so we've been very particular of trying to be careful with our daughters. And it does make a difference to help with young women, especially because they take ownership at an earlier age when you show them that their bodies are important.
Absolutely.
And it just amazes me the number of young women and young men who do not have anyone to help them understand that.
And I'm reminded in all this, which I think is just critical in our culture, that when we get in conversations like this, we focus on young men and women who are not married. We don't talk enough about, we don't teach enough about family planning, and we've got to do something about that, because I think that's one of the biggest problems in our culture.
Yeah, we have.
No one wants to start this conversation.
Yeah.
But a Step Ahead Foundation.
Yeah.
We'll be more than willing to work with the faith-based community, and we have worked with the faith-based community. They welcome us with open arms. As long as we're able to tailor that message to fit their needs, we have not received any resistance. But we honestly have to think about family planning when it comes to careers, when it comes to education, when it comes to successful marriages. This has to be at the center of it, because it is at the center.
Well, and friends, just take this word with you. In the world that we believe that Christ will redeem and one day restore, the conversations of life and connection and relationships will all be brought back to exactly how they were created to be, and there will be sanctification. That's a big word for being made whole. But until then, it is the church's responsibility to help families to think as deeply as they can about the issues that can lead to catastrophic things down the way. And being in ministry 30 years, I never thought that I would see or have to deal with some of the conversations that I've had to deal with. I can't imagine the conversations that I have been unheard by a pastor, a physician, a loved one, that someone feels like they're dealing with by themselves. That's why a step ahead is so important, to have these conversations. No matter where you stand on whatever the long spectrum of all of these issues are, nothing gets solved in a community until the community is willing to talk together at the table. And that's what we at this program encourage folks to do. So for Claudia and for Nikki and Maxie and Shane, go into the world and be salt and light. You matter. God bless you.